The hidden rivalries of a silent throne, in a palace where every hallway glimmered with wealth and every gesture carried meaning. The greatest battles were the ones no outsider ever saw, for behind the elegance of royal life, rivalries moved like shadows, quiet, calculated, and capable of reshaping the future and empire without a single word spoken aloud. And for one sheik, stepping into this world meant navigating a game where trust was delicate, alliances were temporary, and silence was often the deadliest weapon. To understand why these hidden rivalries matter today, we must look beyond the surface of royal power. Thrones are not protected by gold. They are protected by perception, influence, and the careful balance of relationships built over generations. Every member of the ruling circle holds a story, a motive, a fear they never reveal. And in that silence, tensions form that can either strengthen a kingdom or fracture it from within. His introduction to this world began subtly. At first, he noticed only the formalities, the polite greetings, the rehearsed compliments, the measured tone elders used when addressing one another. But beneath that controlled surface, he sensed something else. Currents of competition that shifted with every decision. Some sought influence, others sought proximity to power, and a few, hidden behind their calm composure, sought something more dangerous: advantage. The first hint of conflict surfaced during a ceremony meant to honor the family's achievements. As he watched the interactions around him, he noticed how certain individuals gravitated towards specific figures, forming small groups whose conversations carried a different energy. Tighter, sharper, more guarded. A compliment offered too quickly. A glance that lingered too long. A smile that didn't reach the eyes. It was a language spoken without words, and he realized he had much to learn. One elder pulled him aside afterward, offering a quiet warning. "Not all rivalries announce themselves," he said. "Some appear as friendship until the moment they no longer need you." Those words stayed with him, heavy and unsettling. He began observing more carefully, discovering alliances he had never known existed. Alliances based not on loyalty, but on mutually aligned ambition. Then came the moment that changed everything. A proposal surfaced for a new governmental initiative, one that seemed beneficial on the surface. But as he studied the details, he noticed a pattern, a subtle shift of authority that favored one faction inside the palace while weakening another. The proposal, masked as progress, was in reality a strategic move in an invisible power struggle he had unknowingly stepped into. And he understood then that the throne may have been silent, but the rivalries surrounding it were preparing to speak. He dove deeper into the proposal, tracing its origins and uncovering the quiet network of supporters behind it. Each document he examined revealed another subtle shift. Authority redistributed, resources redirected, influence concentrated in ways that seemed harmless individually but alarming when viewed together. What appeared to be a routine initiative was in fact a calculated move to elevate one faction's power under the guise of national advancement. But understanding the strategy was only the beginning. He needed to understand the players. He began observing their interactions more closely. In meetings, he noticed how certain voices echoed each other's opinions with uncanny precision, how disagreements were staged, not genuine, how some members avoided speaking until a particular elder signaled approval with the slightest nod. It was a choreography of influence, an invisible dance performed by people who had mastered the art of appearing neutral while shaping decisions from the shadows. Still, he faced a dilemma. Exposing the faction prematurely could fracture the delicate balance within the palace. Remaining silent, however, would allow their influence to grow until it overshadowed the kingdom's broader interests. And so he chose a path that required patience, gather proof, learn the true intentions, and intervene only when doing so would strengthen unity rather than disrupt it. As he investigated, he uncovered private meetings held outside official circles, communications routed through intermediaries, and agreements drafted in language vague enough to hide their true consequences. None of it amounted to treason, but all of it pointed to a quiet consolidation of power designed to shift the center of influence toward a select few. The conflict intensified when he confronted a trusted advisor, hoping to understand the deeper motivation behind the initiative. The advisor hesitated before offering a half-truth, explaining that the faction believed the younger generation lacked the discipline to lead responsibly. They saw themselves as protectors of tradition, he said, guiding the kingdom away from modern ideas they deemed too risky. But as the sheik listened, he sensed something more: fear disguised as caution, ambition disguised as preservation. This revelation struck him deeply. The faction was not merely seeking control. They were shaping a future that excluded those who did not conform to their vision of authority. The tension escalated when a draft of the initiative was leaked to the public. According to the carefully crafted narrative, the proposal was a gift to the nation, symbolizing unity, progress, and responsible governance. Support for the initiative began to grow, fueled by polished statements and orchestrated praise. And suddenly, opposing it risked appearing divisive or ungrateful. He found himself trapped between perception and truth. A misstep could cost him the trust of his people. A delay could cost the kingdom its balance. And with each hour, the faction strengthened its position, quietly, strategically, relentlessly. A decision was approaching, one that would determine whether he allowed the silent throne to tilt toward hidden agendas, or whether he would challenge the forces shaping its future from behind the veil. The moment of confrontation drew closer with every passing day. Public support for the initiative continued to swell, shaped by carefully crafted statements and endorsements that appeared spontaneous but were anything but. The faction strategy was precise: secure the people's approval first, then isolate anyone within the palace who dared oppose them. It was a silent takeover, not the throne itself, but the machinery that directed its power. He understood the gravity of what was unfolding. If the initiative passed in its current form, the faction would gain influence strong enough to shape national decisions for years to come. Their vision of the future, rigid and exclusive, would overshadow the inclusive progress he believed the nation needed. But confronting them required impeccable timing. Too early, and he would be dismissed as paranoid. Too late, and the structure of authority would shift beyond repair. He began seeking allies, not those who spoke the loudest, but those whose loyalty ran deep and whose judgment remained unclouded by ambition. Some were seasoned advisors who valued balance over dominance. Others were rising leaders who believed in transparency, collaboration, and national unity. Quiet conversations took place behind closed doors, forming a coalition rooted not in power, but in principle. But even as he gained allies, the faction tightened its grip. They accelerated the initiative's approval timeline, pushing for a vote before a full review could be conducted. They appealed to nostalgia, invoking the wisdom of past generations to mask their ambitions. And they whispered rumors, subtle, poisonous hints that he was resisting change out of insecurity, not insight. The pressure grew unbearable when a respected elder, someone he admired deeply, pulled him aside and urged him to support the initiative. The elder spoke of tradition, stability, and the need to preserve the ways that had guided their ancestors. His voice carried sincerity, yet his perspective had been influenced by the faction's narrative. It was a devastating moment, proof of how effectively they had woven their influence through the highest circles of trust. Despite the turmoil, the sheik refused to act out of impulse. He revisited the document again and again, mapping every implication, every clause, every shift in authority the faction had hidden within elegant language. The more he examined it, the clearer the threat became. The initiative would centralize decision-making into a council controlled by the faction, effectively weakening all other branches of leadership, including his own. The turning point arrived late one evening when he discovered something more troubling than ambition. Buried deep within a supplementary appendix was a clause that granted the council emergency authority over key national assets during periods of transition. The wording was vague, wide in scope, and dangerously easy to exploit. It was the final piece of evidence he needed. The next day, he summoned his closest allies. He explained the full extent of the faction's intentions, laying out not accusations, but proof. The room shifted from uncertainty to resolve. For the first time, they saw the true stakes, not a political disagreement, but a battle for the integrity of the kingdom's future. Yet exposing the faction publicly would ignite a crisis, and confronting them privately would require a level of diplomacy and courage few leaders ever have the chance to demonstrate. He knew the moment had come to step into the silent battlefield that had been forming around him since the day he entered the palace. And the words he would choose next would decide whether the throne remained silent or finally spoke. He requested a private assembly, a gathering limited to the most influential members of the ruling circle. including the faction's leaders. The room was arranged with ceremonial precision, yet beneath its elegance ran a current of tension sharp enough to cut through the silence. Everyone sensed that the meeting would not be routine. Everyone sensed that a line, once blurred, was about to be defined. He began calmly, acknowledging the faction's effort to strengthen the nation. His tone was steady, measured, almost disarming. But then he revealed what they never expected: a comprehensive breakdown of the initiative, exposing every concealed shift of authority, every vague clause, every pattern of influence buried beneath polished language. He spoke not with outrage, but with undeniable clarity, clarity that made denial impossible. The room changed instantly. Defenses rose, faces stiffened. A few attempted to challenge his interpretation, but he countered with evidence so meticulously gathered that their arguments crumbled before they formed. And then he addressed the clause granting emergency authority, the one piece of the proposal that transformed ambition into a threat. That revelation, delivered with calm precision, shattered the facade of unity the faction had tried to maintain. The confrontation reached its climax when he spoke directly to the heart of the matter. Leadership, he said, is not strengthened through hidden power grabs or silent consolidations. It is strengthened through transparency, shared responsibility, and the courage to protect the nation, even when doing so means confronting those closest to you. His voice did not rise, yet every word struck with undeniable force. He challenged them not as rivals, but as guardians of a shared legacy, demanding they choose between ambition and integrity. For a long moment, the room held its breath. When the faction's leader finally responded, the veil of subtlety had fallen away. He attempted to justify the initiative as a protective measure, an effort to preserve tradition in uncertain times. But the sheik countered with the simplest truth. Tradition survives only when its purpose is honored, not when it is used as camouflage for control. One by one, elders who had initially supported the initiative began to shift their stance. Some expressed surprise at the hidden clauses. Others admitted they had relied on summaries crafted by the faction without examining the full document. The faction's influence, once ironclad, began to fracture under the weight of exposure. The final decision came quietly but decisively. The initiative was withdrawn. A full review was ordered, and a new protocol was established, one requiring complete transparency in all future proposals affecting national governance. The throne did not punish the faction, but it did something far more powerful. It rebalanced the system, ensuring no silent consolidation of power could ever take root again. In the aftermath, tension eased slowly. Trust rebuilt itself not through declarations, but through accountability. The sheiks of the ruling circle came to respect the quiet strength he had shown. Strength rooted not in force, but in clarity, patience, and unwavering commitment to the kingdom's future. That evening, he stood alone in the palace courtyard, listening to the echoes of footsteps fade into the night. The throne remained silent, but for the first time, he felt it listening, acknowledging the courage it had demanded of him. He had learned a timeless truth. Rivalries shape leaders, but integrity defines them. And in a world of shifting alliances and quiet battles, the truest victory is preserving the future without sacrificing the soul of the empire. So what do you think? Are we repeating the same mistake again?